Hi there, everyone, and welcome to Paper Wish's weekly webisodes. I'm Sarah Newman, and I'm really excited today to bring you 5 new colors of Opal Polish, plus 6 new 3D embossing folders, and a really fun festive collection die, all from our friends at Creative Expressions. I have 5 Christmas card projects to share with you today and a lot to explore. I'm really glad you're here. Come play with us. Let's start with our Opal Polish. Opal Polish is a water-based, fast-drying coloring medium. It's actually got mica embedded in it, so it will give you a beautiful iridescent look when you apply it to cardstock, especially when you combine it with embossed pieces of cardstock like we'll be doing today. Now, the color range that we have is lilac rose, blue wisteria, gilded apricot, summer sky, and yellow limes. These can all be used individually, and you can combine them together if you want to. I'm going to move aside my card projects. We'll be taking a look at those a little bit later. And I'll move aside most of my Opal Polish colors here so that we can work with the summer sky. Now, I know a lot of folks have probably caught the March 17th webisode on Opal Polish techniques, but we might have some folks who are new to these cool products. So I'm going to do a quick recap before we get into our main demos. As you can see, the Opal Polish comes in this handy jar. It's got a built-in applicator, little sponge applicator that you can just pop off of the top. Now, when you get your Opal Polish to start with, you're going to need to remove this little plastic tab on here. I just used a pair of old scissors to pop that off, and that's going to give you access to your built-in sponge. Now, our friends at Creative Expressions do recommend that you prime your sponge before you use it by wetting it with some warm soapy water and then pressing out the excess water, and then you're ready to go. So what I like to do is just take off the lid here. You can see that beautiful iridescent color in there. And then you can just take your sponge, dip it right into that medium, and I like to kind of scrape off any excess just on the edge of the jar here. And you just need to apply it directly onto your cardstock. So I'm going to set this aside. I've got a piece of smooth white cardstock here. And as you can see, it's really quick and easy to apply this directly onto that cardstock. Now this is just one application of that beautiful summer sky. If you want to, you can add more. You can add as many layers of color as you want to create the depth that you want. So this is the beautiful blue on white cardstock. I think you can see the shimmer and the shine here. So you're getting that beautiful pearlescent effect. But the great thing about Opal Polish is that you can also use it on black cardstock. And this will give you a completely different look. So now I'm going to apply this onto my smooth black cardstock. And you can see the different effect that I can get from this. So let's take a look at the two together. My white cardstock and my black cardstock both have a beautiful iridescent shine, but it looks pretty different. So you're basically getting 2 looks from one color. But I wanted to also throw in another angle here, and let's take a look what this will come up as on a piece of red cardstock. Now if I apply this on here, I'm getting a really beautiful bluish tinge, but it's also that really pretty golden effect on there. I think as I tilt this here, you can see how that blue is showing up. So do feel free to experiment with different colors of cardstock as you're working with your Opal Polish, and just have a play and see what you can come up with. So there's white and there's black and there's lots of different colors in between there as well. So plenty to play with. Now what I want to do is pull aside these pieces and show you a quick little swatch book that I made with all of the colors that we're going to be looking at today, because I find that this really does come in handy. So here's the yellow limes. I've got it on black and then also on white. You can see how pretty that is. I love that light green. There's also the blue wisteria, and so you've got a really pretty purplish effect on the black and then also on the white as well. Here's the lilac rose. I think this is beautiful, really soft pink, and then also just a really rich purple on the black cardstock. Here's the gilded apricot on white and then again on black, giving you a really pretty golden glow. And then finally, our summer sky that we just saw on black and then also on white. So now that you've seen how to apply your opal polish right onto your cardstock, let's take a look at some different ways you can combine these with embossing folders. I've got 6 three-dimensional embossing folders to share with you today. Now, all embossing is dimensional, but the 3D is extra dimensional, and it's going to give a noticeably deeper impression when you do your embossing. Now, each of the folders measures 199 millimeters by 145 millimeters, which is about 7¼ inches by 5 5/8 of an inch. This makes them larger than our standard 5 by 6½ inch card blank, which I really like because it means that you can have a little bit of room to trim around any excess if you're covering your card front with one of these embossed designs. Now let's take a look. I thought I would show you the designs and then also what they look like embossed onto plain black cardstock. So we'll start with the Stylized Poinsettias. We also have a flourish border frame. This is great also for scrapbooking. There's the circular stars design. There's also the retro poinsettias. I have to say this is one of my favorites. We have a rose bed, which I think is perfectly appropriate for all different themes, not just for Christmas roses. And then finally finishing off with the holly and berries. Now, one thing I want to point out with the holly and berries, which is also applicable to the rest of the designs, with each of these, you can see you're getting the raised or the embossed side of the design. But when you flip it over, take a look, you're also getting the debossed design as well. So it's essentially giving you 2 designs in one for each of these different embossing folders, which is great. Let's take a look at how these can be used with our opal polish techniques. Our first technique is to simply apply opal polish onto cardstock as we saw before. You just let it dry and then put it into your embossing folder and run it through your die cutting machine. So let's take a look at how to do this. I'm using the gilded apricot and I'm working onto a piece of black cardstock for this one. Of course, you could do white or, as we saw, any other color cardstock as well. Just going to get a bit of this color onto my applicator and then simply apply it right onto the cardstock. Now, as we saw before, you can add as much as you want on here, and all you need to do is just let this dry and you're ready to emboss. So in this case, I'm going to be working with the circular stars embossing folder. So what I'll do is simply take my cardstock piece, and if I wanted to, depending on my project, I can go all the way to the edges here. I could even use a larger piece of cardstock if I wanted to. Simply pop this into the folder and close this up and send it through my embossing machine or die cutting machine. Now, one thing you will want to take note of course, is which side of the embossing folder you're using, because remember, you can get an embossed or a debossed side, just depending on which side you have your color facing. So do take a quick look at that before you get into your embossing, because then you can change the way your embossed design looks like. Now, if I'm getting this embossed, you can see the raised area here and how beautiful that looks with that gilded apricot. Now, I could use this as it is, but since I've got this really pretty 3-dimensional and very raised and tactile effect on here, the other thing I could do is come in with a sanding block or piece of sandpaper and just very gently sand away some of that raised area on here. Just need to brush off any excess bits, but you can see how you could really create a beautiful and extra dimensional effect, just depending on what color of cardstock you have underneath. So this would be beautiful with the black. Of course, it would also look lovely with white as well. So this is one technique that you can use. Let's take a look at another one. Now in this case, I have embossed my white cardstock, and with this one, it's the retro poinsettia. So again, this is one of my very favorites. Now I can leave it as it is, but I can also color it with my opal polish. So I'm going to grab the summer sky, which is that really pretty blue. And once again, just grab that applicator, get a little bit of that color onto the sponge. And then I want to hit just the highlight areas of this design. So I'm going to make sure that I don't have an excess amount of that opal polish on here. And then I'm just going to apply this very gently, not pressing too hard, just very gently to hit the high raised edges on here. And just take a look, how pretty is that? Now you can, of course, do the entire piece. You could do just a section though if you wanted to as well. That would also be really pretty on here too. So this is another quick and easy way that you can combine the opal polish with your embossing folders. Look how pretty that is. It's got color and some iridescent shine on there too. Really like that. I'm going to put aside my summer sky and also my embossed piece, because you can also do another technique that's really simple by coloring your piece of cardstock, as we saw before, and then embossing, as we've seen. This is going to give you an effect like this. So this is Lilac Rose Opal Polish on the embossed Stylized Poinsettia. So I can leave it like this. I can also add another color on top. So let me get the Blue Wisteria, and let's see what this will look like when I add a little bit of this color on here. So I'm working with the debossed side of my design. So let's see how this will look if I'm combining two colors in one. So take a look, how pretty is this? This is going to give me a really soft and beautiful effect. But the combination of those two colors is really, really effective. So again, you can use as much or as little color as you want to. But I just think that this is so pretty and gives a really nice dimensional effect, especially with that pattern. Now this is a poinsettia, but I would argue that you could use this design for lots of occasions of cards, not just for Christmas. Okay, let's take a look at another one. Here I've got the rose bed, which I've embossed onto black cardstock. So let's see, I'm going to get the yellow limes, which is this really fun green color. And again, same process as before. Just get a little bit of this onto the sponge. And you'll notice that I'm really trying to scrape off any excess medium on here, just on the edge of the jar, so that I'm not overdoing it, because a little color will go a long way. And then as I'm applying this onto the raised section of this design, just take a look. How pretty is that? Really striking and dramatic. Now the interesting thing about this, I'm going to pop this lid back on here because I want to flip over my design just so that you can see this is what it looks like on one side, but then on the other side, this is the second design that you can get from that same embossing folder. Now this is with Lilac Rose on the black cardstock. So really, really beautiful, quick and easy to do. One last favorite one that I need to show you is this one, which is the Holly and Berries design. So as we talked about, you've got the raised or the embossed section, but if you flip it over, then you will have the debossed area. And while I've got the yellow limes out, I'm going to just grab a little bit of this medium on here so that you can see. This is, I think, one of my very favorite of these embossing folder designs. And this is one of my favorite ways to use the design, is to really take advantage of the debossed areas. So take a look. How pretty is that? Now again, you can add some more color if you want to. I always apply with a light touch because you don't want to get too much in there. But of course you can always go back and add some more color. And as I'm working, I'm just using a circular motion to apply this color. Absolutely beautiful. I really, really love this, and I think it makes just such an easy effect on here. Now, one final technique that I just have to share with you, because I do use this in some of my card projects that I'll show you, is a quick and easy spattering technique. So I'm going to move aside this piece and bring in a piece of plain white cardstock. I'm also going to grab a palette knife, or you can use a plastic knife if you have one on hand. That also works. And I'm just going to get a little bit of that medium and put it onto my craft sheet. And then what I'm going to do is add some water next to this. I'm going to make a watery wash here and blend this really nicely with that water so that I've got a nice wash on here. And now the other thing that I need to have is a brush. You can use a water brush, you can use an old toothbrush, you can use a paintbrush, which is what I'm going to grab here. And just load up that brush with your watery medium, hold it over your cardstock, and then tap the handle to spatter this medium onto your cardstock. And you may decide to turn your cardstock around so that you don't have the pattern going in one direction all the time. But this gives you a really pretty, subtle effect. It's a great way to put your opal polish to use for another look, but it also will combine really nicely if you're putting two designs together. So all you need to do is just let this dry. It will take a little bit longer than your direct to paper opal polish. This is actually already dry and ready to go. This will take a little bit longer, but you can also speed up the dry time with a heat tool if you want to, and then you are ready to put it to use. Okay, now that we've explored some fun techniques, let's take a look at a couple of Christmas card projects. Our first card project features craft cardstock that's been colored with gilded apricot and then embossed with the stylized poinsettia for the background. Now, we've talked a lot about using white cardstock and black cardstock, but don't forget other colors like craft cardstock can also be used with this medium to create some really beautiful effects. Now for the middle ground here, this is the circular stars that's been embossed onto black. Now I highlighted it with the summer sky and then created a nice watery wash of that same summer sky and spattered that on there just for an extra bit of color and dimension. The focal element is the Denise cutting die. We're going to take a closer look at that in just a second. But I want to point out that the background here, that lovely apricot color that you see, this is the gilded apricot and it's been applied simply to white cardstock. Now for the snowflake piece that you see in the center, that same gilded apricot has been applied to craft cardstock and then die cut. Now the other elements that I'm working with on this card, as you can see, some of our favorite dazzles. I've got a thin line dazzle going down here at the bottom, and then I'm also going to be using Christmas dazzles in script and tiny, and you can see that beautiful script that I've used down here. Let's take a closer look at the Denise collection because I'm going to be using this throughout the rest of the card projects as well. So as you can see, you're getting 6 dies in here and they're all a really wonderful nested effect. So you get a lot of combinations with this. So I'm going to bring in just the first base piece that you see, which is this really useful frame. This is measuring about 4 1/4 inches. Then you've also got the decorative element that you can just nest right inside here. You can leave this as it is. If you want the centerpiece cut out, you can use this 2 1/2 inch square, which can become in handy for lots of different designs as well. And then you've got an ornate insert that you could pop right inside there. If you want the inside circle cut out, you've got a die for that. And then finally, you have a little snowflake motif on there. So you can use these all together or in parts and pieces if you want to. So I thought I'd just show you a couple of different options that you can do with this. So if you're starting maybe with that craft cardstock and just creating your base piece on here, you could use the ornate frame and create something really simple like this. Now, this is a festive collection, so it is meant to be used for Christmas, but I think it works for just about any theme. If you want to cut out the inside of that frame, that will give you a really pretty look like this. You can start combining some of your dies together as well. So here's that really pretty ornate insert in there. I think that is stunning. And if you want to use them all together, of course, you can absolutely do that and you would get a really striking effect like this. Now, don't forget you've got all of these centerpiece dies in here as well, so you can always use those together. So I thought I'd just cut a couple of pieces and we'll take a look at what happens if you just add that little square in there and then maybe take that ornate centerpiece and maybe use the little snowflake in here. This could be really pretty. You could, of course, turn everything at a diagonal and have a diamond shape on there. You could leave it like this, or you could simply pop another frame right on top here. So as with so many of the creative expressions dies, you can create lots and lots of different combinations. And the other thing that is great about these, of course, is the little insert where you've got some project ideas in here as well. So they never leave you without inspiration, which is great. So back to some more inspiration with our products today. So I want to show you a second card here. Now this one is using the Flourish border frame, and I've embossed this onto white and colored it with the yellow limes. I actually made my own card base, which is 5¼ inches by 7, just because this is a larger frame shape. Now this is great for cards, but I think it would also be really pretty on a scrapbook page as well. Now the middle layer here is gilded apricot on black cardstock that's been embossed with the rosebud embossing folder, and I sanded off some of that excess so that I get a bit of a dimensional effect, an extra dimensional effect. Here's another look at the Stylized Poinsettia, and this time I've colored black cardstock with blue wisteria. I embossed it, and then I highlighted it with gilded apricot. And I spattered the card front, you can see here, with watery summer sky. And then the die cut elements are simply white cardstock that's been colored with summer sky as well. And you'll notice this little snowflake motif in here. This is the center focal piece of that die collection, but it's been snipped outside of its frame. So you can also cut apart the die cuts as well to create your own motifs. And I've again got some dazzles down here at the bottom. I've popped this bit up with some foam tape and then added a little bit of gold ribbon on here as well. So our next card project is the Retro Poinsettias. And this has been embossed on white and then colored with lilac rose and highlighted with blue wisteria. So you get a couple of different overlapping colors on here. The focals are die cut from white cardstock that's been colored with blue wisteria. And then you can see some of my little dazzles in here as well. And I've got them top and bottom too. And our final card project is using the holly and berries. This has been embossed onto white cardstock and then colored with yellow limes. I spattered yellow limes onto black cardstock, and that's going to give a completely different effect as well for this bottom portion. And the card focal elements that you see on here are all of those beautiful Denise dies on black cardstock alternating with white cardstock that was colored with yellow limes. Now for this card, I used a 6-inch square base because I wanted to have enough room for that embossed background to really show underneath and around my square focal elements on here. So I think you can see that there are many, many fun and easy ways to put together these new supplies from Creative Expressions for your Christmas cards as well as cards throughout the year. I'm so glad that you've joined me today, and I can hardly wait to see what you come up with. Thank you so much for watching today, and thank you for being a part of the Paper Wishes family. We are really so glad that you're here with us. Be sure to leave a comment down below because we'd also like to hear what you think about today's webisode. Each item that you see here can be purchased separately, and you can see those below. However, we've also bundled them into a creative money saver just for you. For that money saver, just see this webisode on paperwishes.com.